when I was driving the speed limit. Not everyone wants to do that, have you noticed? And they seem to find me. I have a magnet on my bumper. All those who want to drive faster than the speed limit on a 2-lane road, all show up here, please. I thought it said spay and neuter Alabama, but no, it says tailgate here, please. So I made an effort, and I put my flashers on just to let them know that, well, let me be honest, just to let them know that I follow the speed limit. Didn't help. They backed off for a few seconds, then right back on there. So then the road widens just a little bit, and I turned off my flashers, turned on my right signal, and went into the right lane, and they buzzed around me really fast, and I tried very hard not to wave at them. You know what I mean? And then I moved back into the lane I needed to be in to make my turn, and then just a few hundred yards ahead, there's a traffic light, and we're all stopped. They're right in front of me. And the only thing I wanted to do was to channel my little sister when she was 4 years old and say, na, 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 na. I don't even know what that really means, but that's all I wanted to do. So let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. And that's not where I was. So if I'm going to be really real, if I'm going to keep it real with myself, I have to acknowledge where I am. And why was I there? Why am I so addicted, not attached? It's not a preference. It's an addiction to the speed limit. Why am I so addicted to that? Well, I kept working with that and with using my tools, my personal growth tools, my journaling, my prayer, my meditation, all the other things and the things I've learned in my years of growing through this spiritual path. And I realized that when I was growing up, it was very important for me to follow the rules in order to stay alive. That is not a metaphor. And as the eldest of the 4 daughters, it was not only important for me to keep myself alive by following the rules, I kept my sisters alive by following the rules, by enforcing these rules on them. And if you ask any of them, I was not all that kind about it. This is something we've all made amends around, and I have compassion now for my parents who knew no better, and also for the path that gives me compassion today and gives me a way to understand that I'm attached to following the speed limit because if I don't, my sisters will die. Now, is that rational? No, that is not rational. But it's the thought and the feeling that's going on in my heart. And I am committed on this path to keeping it real, to understand what's really going on in my heart and mind so that I can remember who I am, so that I can remember that I am no longer that scared little girl, that I now have compassion for how I grew up, and I am grateful for it because it taught me so much. And so I have an opportunity then to have compassion for the woman who was driving on my bumper. Perhaps she has a story too, and I can have compassion for her story. Perhaps she was trying to keep her family alive by getting where she needed to get. So here's something that gives me peace. Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, that I may not so much seek to be understood as to understand, that I may not so much seek to be loved as to love. Now, every time I pray this prayer and every time I read this, the prayer of St. Francis, I get it on a different level. And this week, while I've been working with this, my lesson for this week while I've been working with this, what I got this week was St. Francis wasn't saying that he already had hope, faith, all these things together. He was saying, these are the things that I'm experiencing. So, divine master, and where is that divine master? Jesus taught us. It's right here in us. So when I say divine master, I'm not asking for some kind of intervention from on high. I am asking the divine master of my heart to remember who I am. Oh, divine master, grant this for me. So does anybody remember the video game Pong? Some of you are old enough to remember that. One of the earliest ones. We were so impressed. And probably the computational power that it took to power that game is about 1/10 of what is in my cell phone today. So Pong had a ball like a tennis ball that just bounced back and forth. And it would hit a barrier and just bounce back and forth. And that's what this feels like to me, this prayer of St. Francis. That I'm bouncing back and forth between despair and hope, between sadness and joy. And I'm finding, as I do this, I am learning who I am. I am beginning to heal those areas of myself that were false. These things that were not true about me, that I believed to be about me. And as I do that, I believe that that may have been what Eric Butterworth was teaching in his book, In the Flow of Life. Perhaps that is the flow of life. The flow is flowing between what turns up in our human experience and what we know to be true for us as spiritual beings. Living from my heart instead of living from rules helps me keep it real. Keeping it real for me looks like taking the time and investing the energy in getting to know who I am and why I'm here. The lesson I presented 2 weeks ago was about that, where I offered tools for you, like writing your own obituary or using the Franklin Covey tool for the mission statement builder. It's Unity's second principle. We are expressions of the divine, of the Creator, and therefore our nature. Because the Creator is all goodness and all allness, we too are all goodness and allness. And so this is about me remembering that second principle. And our example for living this is Jesus the Christ, who not only taught us, I am the light of the world, but taught us what? We are the light of the world. You are the light of the world. I am the light of the world. This is unity. What does that mean? We are one. The same person who was being tailgated was the tailgater. And just as an aside, 5 days after I decided to use this experience as an example, I inadvertently ran a red light. When I say inadvertent, it wasn't one of those times where I was racing under an amber light. The left-hand turn light turned green, and I went straight ahead. Right under a red light, and as I went under it, I thought, oh my goodness, what did I just do? We are one. We are one, and nobody died, fortunately. And I could have running a red light, so I don't recommend that as a learning opportunity, but it was valuable for me at the time. So how do we get in touch with our hearts so that we can live from our hearts instead of from the rules that may or may not work for us anymore? Some of those do work for us now, but we need to, I invite you, we don't need anything. I invite you to join me in looking at those rules and choosing now consciously, rather than just going along with what we learned in the past. Consciously now choosing. So now today, I mostly choose to drive the speed limit. I didn't used to. 30, 40 years ago, no, not so much. I have speeding tickets to show for it. But I have a greater respect now, and also it's a lot harder for me to heal these days. That's just been my experience. So how do we get in touch with our hearts and live from our hearts? rather than from the rules. For me, how we do that is intimacy. So what's intimacy? Well, there's a clever line in an old Albert Brooks movie where Albert Brooks is playing the adult son of the widowed mother played by Debbie Reynolds. And Albert Brooks is asking his mother, why don't I know more about this man? This man, he's asking her about a man that she's been dating. Why don't I know more about this? What's going on here? And she said, well, I just didn't think it was important. Well, of course it's important. It's important for me to know something about a man that you're intimate with. And she says, we're not intimate. We just have sex occasionally. So in our culture, we often equate intimacy with sex. And yet, even in the movies, they know that's not what intimacy is. In the dictionary, it defines intimacy from the Latin word innermost. Innermost. And in her book, Struggle for Intimacy, Judith Wodatz writes, intimacy means that you have a love relationship with another person, and I would interject this with ourselves as well, where you offer and are offered validation, understanding, and a sense of being valued intellectually, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. The more you are willing to share and be shared with, the greater the degree of intimacy. A healthy relationship is not a power struggle. The two of you do not have to think the same way about things. A healthy relationship is not symbiotic. The two of you do not have to feel the same way about things. So there was a couple who were celebrating their wedding anniversary, and every year when they celebrated their anniversary, this is not the same couple, Dan, just so you know, different story. There was a couple celebrating, and every year they would go back to the inn where they celebrated their honeymoon. They would go back, and usually for this celebration, they would go to the inn, they'd have dinner, and they would go ahead and leave that same evening and get the train back. Well, this one year on the 50th anniversary, they missed the train by just a couple of seconds. And so they went back to the inn and decided they would stay the night. And as they were getting ready to retire, the woman is brushing her hair, her silver hair. And she says to her husband, there's summer in my heart. There's winter in my hair. And he says, if there had been spring in your feet, we might have made the train. We create intimacy directly through deep introspection, just like I did in processing the idea of being tailgated on Ross Bridge Parkway. If you ever hear a news report that the traffic is backed up on Ross Bridge Parkway, that's me. So we really notice what our partners and our neighbors and our coworkers and our fellow drivers are doing and saying and what they're reflecting back to us about who and what we are. Because we know in this path that it's not about them, it's about us if we choose to take that opportunity. So here's another way to think about intimacy. This isn't new. You've heard it before. You've heard it from me. You've heard it from other ministers here. Intimacy. Into me see. When I see you, I see into me. If you aren't willing to share with me on a heart-to-heart level, then that tells me that I'm not willing to share with you. And that could have been for me a choice, a healthy choice that I made because I've learned that you aren't trustworthy. That when I share with you on a heart-to-heart level, that you use it against me later. And if that's true for you, then I have to ask myself, where in my life am I storing up things to use later for ammunition? Now, as I move through this and I continue to remember who I am and I become able to share on an intimate level with people who are trustworthy, those people who are not trustworthy for me, who are not sharing on that same level with me, they will go away. There have been many people who have gone away from my life. And other people will be attracted into my life. And that's Unity's third principle. Our thoughts are creating our experience. That's how. Here's why. Why would we choose intimacy? Into me, see? because it makes our lives richer, because it makes our relationships more rewarding. You are the face of God, we sang this morning. So each time I see you, I see me, and I see God, the creation, the creator that created us all. So why do we do this? It's bringing me into alignment. But with alignment with what? I don't know. I really don't know. From my heart, I don't know, because it keeps changing and evolving for me. Last year, it was into alignment with God's will for me of absolute good. And I learned that that was a line that I just learned and then regurgitated over and over, and it wasn't really what I felt in my heart. And when I got to my heart, I realized it was into alignment with who I am as a divine being. And that also continues to evolve. That's basic to unity principles. That's why there is no ist, there is no ism. We are unity students. We are truth students, continuing to learn, continuing to evolve. And we invite any person who comes to any of the things that we offer, take what works for you, if any of it works for you, and leave the rest. This is not dogma. This is an invitation to grow into who we are created to be, who we already are, to just grow into that suit and wear it for all we're worth. From his book, Creating Love, John Bradshaw writes, love involves passion, hard work, and courage. And I would say this applies to intimacy as well. It is a process. It is often ambiguous and stormy. Love is constantly developing and deepening. Expansion is its very nature. There is no happily ever after. Take a breath. There is no happily ever after, because soulful love is always adjusting. It's always balancing itself. It is never completely accomplished. Can I love you without being intimate with you? Yes. But I cannot love you without being intimate with me. From the first letter of John, that's not it. I didn't put the marker there. We're back to the Bible, the Bible drills of the Baptist church I grew up in. Where is John's first letter? I've neglected to put there it is. Okay. From the first letter of John, little children, you are from God, for the one who is in you is greater than the one who is in the world. Beloved, let us love one another, because love is from God. Whoever does not love does not know God, for God is love. God is love, and those who abide in love abide in God, and God abides in them. And whether or not we're abiding in love consciously, God, that creative, universal power of love still abides in us, still continuing to have that spark of reminding, remember who you are. Remember why you're here. Intimacy. Into me, see me. That's all we're saying to each other. See me, see past my pain. See me, see past my faults and my shortcomings. See me, see past my joy. See me, see past my strengths and my gifts and my talents. And when we do see ourselves and we see each other this way, then we are keeping it real. And then we are shining our lights, and that glow expresses all over our universe. And we are living in the light. Oh, divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, that I may not so much seek to be understood as to understand, that I may not seek so much to be loved as to love. Let us pray. Almighty God, the God who is at the core of my being, the Godness, the goodness that is me, expressing as me. I am grateful. I am grateful for every tailgater that shows up in my life. It gives me a chance to remember who I am and why I'm here. And I make my commitment here and now that that is why I'm here, to remember and to understand and to love. Amen.